Good
I think
afternoon.
it's time to start. Let's see, go ahead, Jewel.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board, staff, and members of the public. After my statement, the chairman will open this meeting and explain the rules for this electronic meeting. Please keep your microphone on mute when you are not speaking. The technical support team may proactively mute participants if the microphone is picking up background noise. Board members should check to make sure the microphone is not muted before speaking. You may text me at 540-336-3948 at any time during the meeting if you need technical support, and an IT tech will call your cell phone to assist. I now turn the meeting over to Board Chairman Kobliss.
Thank you, and I'd like to introduce Jonathan Rack as our legal counsel. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Due to the local state of emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic, the Loudoun Water Board is meeting today by electronic means pursuant to our recently adopted electronic participation policy. Public notice and meeting access information was provided on the Loudoun Water website, and a recording of the meeting will be available following the meeting at the Loudoun Water website.
Thanks, Jonathan. During presentations, staff will pause for questions and discussion. There will be an opportunity for discussion after each presentation. We will also monitor and recognize the hand raise feature. For each action item, a roll call voice vote will be taken by the board secretary. Opportunity for public comment was provided within the meeting notice. Any written comments were provided to the board secretary and will be read during the public speaker's agenda item. Jewel, if you could take a roll call of the board.
Yes, sir. Mr. Allen?
Here.
Mr. Bonfils? Mr. Bonfils?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Byers?
Here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Kobliss?
Here.
Mr. Moody?
Here.
Ms. Sursakar? Ms. Sursakar? Absent for the vote. And Mr. Sultan?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve last month's minutes?
So moved, Marty.
This is Keith. I'll second.
Any discussion? Go ahead, Jewel.
Thank you. Mr. Bonfils?
Yes.
Mr. Byers?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Sursakar? Mr. Sultan?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
And Mr. Kobliss?
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous.
Okay. Let's see, with that, we'll have the general manager's report.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm not sure why I get to go first, but thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. We got that out of order.
Would you like
Anyway.
to do board member comments first?
Sure. Let's not mess with tradition for the past 12 years.
Okay.
Well, I'll go ahead. Well, should we do public comments first before board member comments, or I don't? Now I'm all messed up.
There were no public speakers, sir, if that helps.
Okay, well that's good. All right, so board member comments. I'll go ahead and go first. I'd like to remind all the board members and to complete the mandatory, I put in quotes, mandatory cybersecurity training videos. And I know who has done them, and I won't put it in public, but I'll give you a little call maybe sometime in the next week. But no, seriously, please do it. We will have a closed meeting today. Also, I'd just like to say that that was a great water supply presentation by Alton, Pam, Jessica, Kinsey, and Sue. It was very, very informative for me. And just one last thing. So there's a lot of Loudoun Water people that work at Creighton Farms Golf Course on a different basis. It just seems like they're there when I'm there. And I always make a point to go over and talk to them. And they always give me that look like, what's this guy doing here? Why is he walking into this room? Why is he coming up to us? And then they kind of smile. But I can tell you that I've done this at least 20 times on purpose to surprise these guys. And then I introduce myself as the chairman, and they're like, every one of them are always very happy to see me, to talk to me, to explain what they're doing. And I have never caught one of them in the past 12 years, like on their cell phone, texting somebody or something like that, or sitting smoking a cigarette. They're always working. So it's very, very impressive. So if you could pass that along, they were just replacing a well pump yesterday. And I got a good discussion of what they were doing and why they were doing it. And they were changing the piping down to the transducer, and it was just great, and I appreciate it. So anyway, it's always a surprise, and I love the expressions on their face every time I see them. Terry, you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any comments at this point.
Okay. Mr. Byers.
I'll just say, Mr. Chairman, I had a similar experience in Brambleton. There's always Loudoun Water people running around because there's so much construction going on. Great people, always happy to meet someone who's on the board of directors. I agree with you. Those people work their butts off. I see them at 9 o'clock at night sometimes when it's dark. They're still trying to do stuff. So great people, and I love seeing them on the road, and I'm glad you do too. That's all I've got.
All right. Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, I'll echo your comments about the Water Resources Committee. I enjoyed that meeting, and so thank you all again, the staff for all that work and preparing that. And other than that, I don't have any comments, so thank you.
Thanks, Brent. Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Interesting in your comment about bumping into the Loudoun Water guys. I was at the Waterford Fair a couple of weekends ago and saw them working on the sewer system, I guess, the house there that they have for Waterford. I almost was going to stop by and say something, but I thought, nah, I'll leave them alone. They're probably busy. They don't want to talk to me. So I left them alone. But I want to echo your comments on the Water Resources Committee meeting I did attend, and presentations that were made by Pam, Alton, Stefan, and Sue. I thought that it was excellent. It was very well done. Jim, you ran a great meeting. Good job. And I just want to comment too that I know this was Carla's idea to come up with this meeting. There was a little bit of reluctance, maybe rising to resistance, a little bit having another committee, but I think we can all see that those who attended can see the benefit, and I compliment Carla for coming up with that. I think it's well done, and it kind of fills in some of the gaps that we don't often hear at either the finance or the CIP meeting or even the board meeting. So well done. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mark.
Sure. Mr. Moody? You're muted. There you go. Oh, now you're muted again.
Muting and unmuting, then muting again. But I just want to echo everyone's comments about the Water Resource Committee meeting. I'm not a member of the committee, but for me being a new member, seeing the discussion that takes place is quite informative. So I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to attending more of those committee meetings.
Mr. Sultan?
I have to echo those comments. The presentations were absolutely first class, very informative, and excellent. And I too have had that incident where I saw some of the guys working. The only thing that I felt was different when I walked up and said who I was. They looked at me like, kind of strange, but they were always very cordial and always seem to be working hard. It's a good group.
Mr. Bonfils?
Thank you. I really also enjoyed that meeting. It was well prepared, the water resources, and I thank all the board members, both the ones on the committee and the ones that attended and the ones that have reviewed it online. It's really good meeting, and the staff at Loudoun Water is doing a great job. Thank you.
And is Angeline on? Okay, it doesn't sound
No,
like it.
sir. No, sir.
Did I miss anybody, Jewel? I think I got everybody. I tried to write down names real quick to check them off, but I think I got everybody, right?
Yes, sir. Everyone except Ms. Sarskar, who's not here. So you did
Okay,
really
great.
good.
All right, thanks. Okay, Carla, now you're up.
Thank you. Thank you. Chairman, I have several things to update you on today. The first being that we had a formal disaster recovery test that was successfully completed on our SAP production system on Saturday, September 25th. We switched over to our backup SAP servers in under 2 hours, tested all major SAP functionality, and at the conclusion of the test, we rolled back to our normal SAP production systems. This was a huge team effort, and I just want to thank all those who participated and made it such a successful test. A couple weeks ago, the lab and compliance staff completed their state audit for our wastewater laboratory certification. Prior to the audit, more than 113 documents were submitted for review, which totaled 610 pages of laboratory data. Our compliance department passed the audit with flying colors, I'm happy to say, and we want to thank them for a hugely successful audit. We did issue the notice of final completion for the Horse Pen Brippy 5 wastewater project. That was a $28 million project, the largest linear project ever undertaken at Loudoun Water. And so, again, we want to extend our thanks to all those who made that a successful project. Last week, we celebrated Customer Service Week, which is an international celebration of the importance of customer service and of the people who serve and support our customers on a daily basis. And we received numerous compliments and notes of appreciation from our customers very often, using words like terrific, fantastic, extremely pleasant, helpful. And so I just want to assure you that we have an amazing customer care team, and it was a great time to take time and celebrate all their hard work. Loudoun Water contributed to a joint press release with Fairfax Water and Prince William County Service Authority regarding the resumption of collection and disconnection processes. If you would like to read the press release, it can be found on our webpage under the Community tab. Staff continues its proactive planning, advancing of capital projects, in collaboration with developers in the county to meet customer needs in the Leesburg Joint Land Management area. Quick update on COVID and its impact on Loudoun Water. As I let you know in a September 17th email update, effective November 1st, the COVID vaccination will be mandated at Loudoun Water, following in the footsteps of both the county and the schools. We will implement a weekly testing protocol for those who choose not to be vaccinated, and that will be available through the end of the year. During that time, we'll evaluate our options for moving forward after December 31st. And at this time, we currently stand at 70% of our employees being vaccinated. Based on that, our return to the workplace plans for those who are currently working remote have been pushed to November 1st, but that is subject to change, again, based on our circumstances. We wanted to let you know that October 23rd is National Drug Take Back Day. The Loudoun County Sheriff's Office partners with the Drug Enforcement Administration in this Take Back initiative. that seeks to prevent pill abuse and theft. But moreover, medication that is flushed down the toilet can have an impact on the health of fish and other wildlife. Most medicines are not completely removed during the wastewater processes. Proper disposal will prevent environmental contamination. Proper disposal of unwanted medication will prevent environmental contamination of our waterways and soils. Just a reminder that we will have a joint meeting of the CIP and Finance Committees on November 17th at 8 a.m. And the primary focus of that meeting will be the 2022 to 2031 Capital Improvements Plan. If approved today, there will also be a virtual public hearing on November 18th at 6 p.m. to present all rate changes that are being presented through a resolution of intent under your action items today. Finally, some statistics. We have approved over 850 applications for the utility assistance funding and have applied more than $495,000 to outstanding balances. And through September, we have 2,003 ERCs with a budget projection through September of 1,650. So we are trending a bit above our projections. And with that, that's all I have.
Let me ask one thing real quick. What day is the rate for the public meeting? Rates
The public
change?
hearing will be on Thursday, November 18th at 6 p.m. if it is approved through the resolution of intent today.
Okay, and do the board members usually attend this? I don't think I've ever attended one. So do we get questions, or how does that usually work?
I'll defer to Jonathan, but typically there is very little interest in our rate public hearings. But yes, we like to have a quorum of the members present for those public hearings. And what will happen is we will leave the public comment period open from the time of that public hearing until you take action in December for any additional comments that might come in. But yes, we like to have most members attend if possible.
Okay, that sounds great. And I assume Jewel will send us an invitation for the Zoom meeting?
Yes, once it's approved today, yes.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right. Sounds good. Any other questions for Carla? Looks like
Yes.
Brent has one.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, Carla, real quick, if somebody doesn't want to get the vaccine or has some objection to that, help me understand what you mentioned, that there's a weekly testing or something. Can you elaborate on that?
Right. So if someone chooses not to get vaccinated, we will be providing weekly testing on site for employees. That will be at the expense of Loudoun Water. We are required to do that if we are going to mandate that testing. And so it's either get vaccinated or get tested.
So the idea is you get tested once a week, and if the test is clear, then keep coming to work. But if the test shows up positive, then you can't come into work, obviously.
Right. And we already have a protocol in place that, you know, if you're not feeling well, stay home. If you have been exposed, stay home. You know, those kind of things. So
yeah, which is very reasonable. And this may be a question for a closed meeting or Jonathan, but I know yesterday NPR was reporting that a federal judge ruled in favor. It's temporary. It's not been decided, but I understand that it's the biggest case in the country on these mandatory vaccinations, and so the federal judge ruled in favor of the employees for United Airlines. It hasn't been decided yet, but you know, Jonathan, I know there's a lot of lawsuits about this and there's a lot of strong opinions, but I'd be interested, you know, ongoing. Maybe today is not the right day to get into it, but I'd just be curious that we're staying within the bounds of what's fair and reasonable.
Yeah, I think, you know, the best answer to give at the moment, because the situation is dynamic, is that we are continuing to monitor both the legal decisions as well as the regulations and frankly, the guidance that we're taking from the local health department and the Board of Supervisors and school board as precedents. And as things develop, we'll obviously have to adapt to whatever the rules become.
But just for clarification, it sounds like it's not mandated if we're telling people that they can get a test weekly. That, to me, that doesn't. When I hear mandate, I hear like you have to get this thing or else. But we're giving people the option of not getting the vaccine as long as they're getting regular testing. Is that correct?
Right. So it's get the vaccine or be subjected to testing. However, we're only committing to that testing through the end of the year. And then we're going to decide what options there are for those who still are not vaccinated. And that's why we're taking sort of these baby steps, because as you noted, everything changes very quickly. And so, before we make any decisions, we run them through legal counsel to make sure that we're following all the rules, we have everything down. So there have been some that have gone strictly mandate the vaccine by such and such a date. And I believe that might have been where the federal government went. I can't remember exactly. But we wanted to start with the same process that the county has, which says you have some time to get the vaccine until you're fully vaccinated or you choose not to get vaccinated. We'll provide this test. But we have to now start working on what does it mean after we, when we hit 12/31, do we continue to test, or are there other things that we can do?
Looks like Sean's got a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Mark. Just following up, Brent was asking Carla, are all employees asked to do any kind of screening before the day they come in, whenever they come in? When I go into the office, we have a Eden Health. It's an app, and we have to go in and fill out, answer 4 short questions, take our temperature, and upload a photograph of our temperature, and then we can go in. But it's the usual questions. You're not feeling well, they ask you to stay home. Are we doing anything like that?
No, we're not doing that. However, based on Virginia Occupational Safety and Health, we are still requiring masks in our public facilities. And actually, we're not allowing employees to ride in the same vehicles together. We're still requiring that social distance piece. So we're not doing the at-home monitoring before you come.
Okay, thanks, Carla.
Mm-hmm.
Carla, if I can this is Tom, but Mr. Kelly, so we do, if someone is out on vacation, we do ask them to go ahead and complete a form prior to returning that basically it shows that they're within, no fever, feeling well, not been around anybody knowingly from COVID, and just kind of addressed Mr. Campbell as well. There's also the exemption piece of this, and that was part of the messaging we sent to employees that, if they would like to seek a religious or medical exemption, that they should start completing those forms and forward those over as soon as possible, because we do realize that is not an easy decision to make, and there is some time that it takes to identify those and have the conversations with legal to make sure that we're granting those that are appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
I think Marty has a question.
Yeah, my question is pretty simple. It's for Jonathan. What's the board role in this whole thing, if any?
I think that the board at this point doesn't have a particular role. I mean, what we're doing is implementing the guidance and directives from federal and state and local authorities, and so we're not really in a position to have any further decisions made by the board.
I think the board. I think that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would suggest for us to move on. We can't really do anything about it right yet. And, when it comes to a point that we do need to make some decisions, we'll follow whatever Virginia guidelines they have.
I think what they're doing is fine. I was just curious.
Okay. All righty. Let's see. As far as the agenda, I believe there's an amendment to the agenda. Go ahead, Sean.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'd like to add to number 7 under new business, a resolution of appreciation to the employees. It is for a vote by the members. I'd like to make that addition to the agenda. With that, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
This is Terry. I'll second.
It's a
Okay,
second.
any comments? Go ahead, Jewel.
Thank you.
Jewel?
Mr. Bonfils?
We can't hear. I
Yes.
can't hear.
We can barely hear you.
Yeah, something's wrong, Jewel. There you go.
Now can you hear me?
No.
Yeah.
But I vote yes.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Sorry about that. Not sure what happened. Mr. Bonfils,
Yes.
Mr. Byers,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Ms. Sursakar, Mr. Sultan,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
and Mr. Koblis.
Yes.
Thank you.
All righty. Marty, go ahead and give your report on the CIP.
Okay. First item is approval of a CMAR contractor and award of pre-construction services for Milestone Reservoir. The Milestone Reservoir project is a large, complex project which includes a raw water pump station to withdraw water from the quarry, pump station intake tunnels in rock, a deep rock tunnel under Goose Creek, and large water transmission mains to connect the facility to the trap rock water treatment facility. Given the complex nature of the project, construction manager at risk, CMAR, was identified as the best way to manage construction and other project-related risks. In accordance with the Virginia Public Procurement Act and Loudoun Water policies, a Loudoun Water Evaluation Committee selected Clark Construction for CMAR. The Clark team will bring their construction experience to the project team and participate in all aspects of completing the project design. They will provide input on constructability, risk, schedule, and cost. The CIP committee recommended approval of the selection of Clark as the CMAR contractor and the water contract to them for pre-construction services for an estimated cost of $877,400 with an approximate 5% contingency for a total authorized budget of $921,300 to be included on the board action agenda. And I'd like to add one thing. I think it's commendable that the staff was realistic enough to realize this was something that they needed help on, and that's to their credit. Next thing is approval of a professional advisor task order for Milestone Reservoir. In accordance with the Virginia Public Procurement Act and Loudoun Water procurement policies, Black & Veatch was selected as a professional advisor to determine whether alternate delivery was appropriate for the quarry, for the Quarry A project. They also led the development of the solicitation documents and planning for the next phase of the project. This is the first time that Loudoun Water will participate in pre-construction services for this type of project, and staff felt that it would be beneficial to continue the services of Black & Veatch as a professional advisor for the project oversight and additional services needed during construction. The CIP committee recommended approval of a task order for Milestone Reservoir professional advisor services be given to Black & Veatch for an estimated cost of $674,000 with an approximate 5% contingency for a total authorized budget of $708,400 to be included on the board action agenda. And the next item was approval of a broad run professional services contract. As a result of rapid residential and data center growth in the broad run reclamation facility service area, phase 3 expansion is needed. Hazen & Sawyer was selected as the most qualified responsive offerer to provide professional services for the Phase 3 expansion. The scope includes a determination of the next increment of expansion and selection of treatment that will enable Broad Run to meet its future challenges. The estimated not to exceed fee negotiated for these services is $1,880,000. The 2021 CIP allocates $1.5 million for planning phase services. This next thing I have a question on. The minutes said the CIP committee authorizes the GM to execute a professional services contract with Hazen and Sawyer. I don't know if the CIP, if that's the right wording. The CIP committee can approve the execution. I don't think we can authorize the GM. I think that's for the board. That's a technicality. The GM to execute a professional services contract with Hazen and Sawyer for not to exceed cost of $1,880,000 with a 5% contingency or an authorized budget ceiling of $1,980,000. The committee forwarded this item for the board action agenda, and that's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, to answer Mr. Sullivan's question, the committees can only recommend action to the full board. They cannot themselves approve or authorize. So that's, I think the intention was to recommend that the board authorize.
I don't know if it's too late, but maybe they should change the wording in those minutes. I didn't notice it till just now.
Yeah, thank you. We'll work through that.
Okay, Terry, a synopsis of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep my comments kind of short because about 95% of the meeting was the rate study, and that's an action item today. So we're going to get a presentation. So I don't want to be super repetitive. I will say that the Finance Committee did take a deep dive into the rate study, and the committee does support the rate increase. They are 3% each year for 3 consecutive years. But we felt it was important that this be an action item and a presentation so that the rest of the board could see it. After we did the rate study, we did have a monthly summary, and our operating revenues are about $2 million above forecast, and that's primarily because the summer water sales are now in the numbers. Non-operating revenues are up about $9 million over forecast. That's primarily because of ERCs. And expenses are down $5 million. So from a budgetary standpoint, we're in fantastic shape. Total cash and equivalents, $251 million with a weighted average yield of 0.67%. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Jim, Water Resources Committee.
Yes, thank you very much. We had a very good meeting, as other people have mentioned. There's really detailed notes as well as the recordings available online, and I recommend everybody page through it. But we had 8 board members there, in addition to the committee, Terry, Brent, and Martin. Mark, you were there. Sean was there. Keith was there. And Angeline was there. So I really appreciate the support for this. The meeting started on time, which is always one of our favorite things. And we proceeded to update on the reservoir. Stefan did a great job in going through all those details, handling a lot of questions, and we are looking forward to his summary report, I think today, or maybe it's next meeting. Then that was followed up by a water supply presentation by Alton, Eccles, Pam Kimmel, Jessica Edwards Brandt, Kinsey Downs, and Sue Crosby. It was a very good, report. It went from everything from how a drought is called and what it means to things that will be happening as part of our strategic plan at the Reservoir Park in getting our message out. So I recommend reading it. The meeting adjourned at 9:14. just a tremendous amount of content in this meeting, and we have these meetings just once a quarter. So I really appreciate the support from the rest of the board and all of our staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. We don't have anything on consent to vote on, so let's move on into action items, and I believe Savita is going to present.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here today seeking approval of the CMAR contractor selection and award of a pre-construction services contract for Quarry A. There we go. So here is our agenda. We'll briefly touch on the background of the project and the team, status of the procurement, and then we'll talk about our path forward for this project. So just a quick highlight of our water supply system. The raw water intake, as you all know, is located up here on the Potomac. It pumps water 5 miles down to Trap, and located down here, Goose Creek Reservoir and Beaver Dam Reservoir are south of Trap Rock, and the quarry is located about 2.5 miles from the raw water intake. So this is the latest project that we have planned to provide resiliency for our water supply program. And the quarry will provide us a wide spot in the line so that we can bank water for Loudoun water customers if there is an event on the Potomac. So digging into a little bit more detail, this slide shows the main components of our project. This is a conceptual configuration. It's one that we will re-examine with our CMAR. But the goal is to convert the quarry into a drinking water reservoir. That'll include a 36-inch fill line to fill the quarry, a deep shaft pump station with withdrawal tunnels, and a 42-inch transmission main that'll connect the pump station into the existing raw water transmission mains. We will have to cross under Goose Creek with a tunnel. So with approval of the CMAR selection and contract, the organizational structure of our team will be as shown on this slide. So we'll retain our designers, Arcadis and Schnabel, and we'll bring the CMAR on board as part of this contract. And we hope to keep Black & Veatch on board, as we'll discuss in the next presentation. Black & Veatch and Arcadis and Schnabel have been really integral to our process and provided critical support during the procurement phase. And we're all excited to be moving on to the next chapter. So this slide outlines the key requirements of the VPPA and Loudoun Water Procurement Policy when procuring a CMAR. This is what we've been engaged in over the last 10 months, and we've now reached the end. Since I was here in May, we've been quite busy. The evaluation committee reviewed and ranked the 3 proposals submitted by the shortlisted offers. We held interviews with each offer after the review of the proposals. This was a really good opportunity for us to dig deeper into the proposals and to get to know each team a little bit better. Using a set of scoring criteria based on a combination of project understanding, pre-construction approach, construction approach, and the proposed project team and cost, the evaluation committee ranked the 3 offers based on their proposals and their interviews. Ultimately, the evaluation committee proceeded with negotiations for the 2 highest ranked offers, and the final selection was based on best value and who the committee felt best aligned with Loudoun Water's needs. So after spending the summer negotiating with MWH and Clark Construction was selected by the evaluation committee to move forward as the CMAR. So the key differentiators for Clark were dedication of tunneling professionals to the project, in particular those who had experience converting a quarry to a water supply reservoir. Clark also has a strong local presence and deep relationships with the local subcontractor market and labor force. They have extensive CMAR experience in Northern Virginia. And just overall, the committee felt a general sense that they fit better in the role as a construction partner on the member of our team. So where do we go from here? Once the award has been made, we'll transition into the design and construction phase of this project with the intention of completing the conversion of the quarry in 2025. We'll be back to seek approval for a construction contract in 2023 Though as we move through pre-construction services, we may find opportunities to carve out smaller construction packages or what we call early work packages to bring forward sooner. So diving into the details a little bit more on our next phase, we'll start the planning and early design phase soon after NTP is issued. Through these early phases, we may identify early work packages that can be carved out and accelerated so they run in parallel with the final design phase. And then once the final design is complete, we'll move on to construction and return to seek approval of the construction contract. So the work contained in the contract currently under discussion includes our pre-design and final design phases, or what we collectively call pre-construction services. So what's included in this scope of work? Well, this scope does follow the typical tasks that are included in the planning and design of a large project, but they're approached from the construction perspective. So as we move through the alternatives analysis and the design, the CMAR will provide input on constructability, safety, risk, construction cost, and construction schedule for each alternative that we consider and at each design milestone. So this means at the end of the design, we'll have greater certainty on construction cost and schedule, and we'll also have the opportunities through pre-construction services to improve the schedule, affect the cost, and assign risks with real-time input from our builder. In addition, the CMAR will support the team by identifying long lead items that we should purchase prior to starting construction in order to improve the schedule. And they'll also find opportunities to start construction on discrete components of the project early. And then lastly, they'll support the project team on how construction may impact our stakeholders or any regulatory considerations. So here is our negotiated contract budget. This is our first CMAR project at Loudoun Water, so we don't have any direct comparable projects, but the negotiated fee is in line with the costs that were provided by the other offers for a similar scope. Okay, seeing no questions, I'll just move to the next slide. This slide does show a summary of the budget for this project. So the green highlighted box is the data that we have related to Clark Construction for now, and we will update this table as the project progresses and we have more information in the future. So with that, I have a recommended motion in front of you for your consideration.
Any questions? Does anybody want to make the motion?
This is Marty. I'll make the motion to approve the recommended motion.
This is Mark. I'll second it. And is there any other discussion or questions? If not, Jewel, go ahead with the roll call.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Bonfils,
I vote yes.
Mr. Byers,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Ms. Sursakar, Mr. Sultan,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
and Mr. Koblis.
Yes. Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
sir.
much, Savita. I guess you're on the docket again for the next presentation.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, everybody. We're thrilled. I'm thrilled. It's been a long time coming, so I'm thrilled. All right, so let's get into the next presentation. So I'm now seeking approval for a task order for Black & Veatch to serve as Loudoun Water's professional advisor for pre-construction services for the quarry project. So similar agenda, but I think I'll just dive right into it. So with approval of this task order, we'll complete our organizational chart. Since this is the first time we are delivering a CMAR project, staff does feel it's important to keep Black & Veatch on board to continue to guide us through the next phase of the project. Throughout the procurement phase, Black & Veatch has been an invaluable member of our team, and they've provided timely advice and support as we navigated our first CMAR procurement. In addition, in discussions with other owners, we've confirmed that using a professional advisor is a prudent approach, especially your first time through. So this is the same project completion pathway that I showed you in the previous presentation. The scope of work that's contained in this task order, it contains all of the elements that Black and Beach will have to support Loudoun Water through pre-construction services. So similar to the CMAR scope of work, the professional advisor scope of work does include the typical tasks included for planning and design of a large project, but in this case, it's with an eye towards supporting staff with a third-party perspective. So as we move through alternatives analysis and design, the professional advisor will provide independent input on constructability and safety and risk and construction cost and construction schedule for all of the alternatives that we consider and at each design milestone. They'll also provide leadership in workshops and meetings to help facilitate discussion between the designer, CMAR, and staff. They'll provide administrative support, helping manage the overall project schedule, the risk register, and maintain records of decisions and comments. And they will work with staff to create various dashboards that will be used to track the project and cash flow management. This scope of work also includes staff with design and construction experience who can provide Loudoun Water with independent assessments and help represent Loudoun Water's interests as we complete the design. So this is our negotiated task order budget. Similar to the CMAR fee, since we haven't done this before, we don't have direct fee comparisons to do an extensive analysis, but the fee does fall in line with the CMAR's fee. Okay, so this last slide shows a summary of the project budget. The green highlighted is the portion for Black and Beach. It does show that through August, we've spent $208,000 of the CMAR procurement assistance task order that was approved last fall. And we will update this table as well as additional information becomes available, and we can share that with you. Mr. Kobliss?
Yeah, thanks. I know this chart here was something that I asked for, but I think what I'm missing here is I don't see Arcadis's cost on this chart. I mean, what I was trying to do was get an overall chart that shows where we are, what contracts we have, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just kind of trying to get an overall, unless Arcadis's number is in this pre-construction services. I mean, I'm actually lost on this chart right now.
Okay, so you're correct. Arcadis's information is not shown on here yet, but we can update this chart to include Arcadis's information and share that with you. So right now, this is
absolutely. I mean, this chart is so that we can be in the budget. Is there other things that are not on this chart besides Arcadis? And how much is Arcadis's contract?
We're still working through that with them.
Oh, well, they haven't given us a contract yet.
So we haven't finalized the budget with them. We do have a scope of work with them for the pre-construction services, but we will need to complete it as we work through the alternatives and we finalize what the design looks like. We may have to return for additional funding.
But we've already approved some design already, right?
Correct. Yes, that was a previous procurement that happened several years ago. So well, they have.
That should be on this chart, is what I'm saying.
Sure, we can add that. Absolutely.
Yeah, Mr. Kobliss, I wanted to also mention that this chart is an evolution. It's something that we are looking to get. I understood your intent with wanting to understand the big picture budget of the Milestone Reservoir project overall, and so that we can give you guys a quick snapshot accounting of all of the professional services and construction contracts that go into this project with, as I understand it, the intent of keeping tabs on our overall performance in the total project CIP budget here at the bottom of the chart. So we're underway with getting this to where it needs to be for you all.
Yeah, I mean, it should be broken down that also that, okay, we anticipated the budget for the design to be this amount, and we've got this amount done. The same thing with pre-construction, construction administration. You know, what is our budget that we have in those places right now? And then we see what the cost is going to be. And then, you know, that way we can see how we're doing on the overall budget.
Almost like
I guess I don't want
look for you.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to get too much in the weeds here. Just the big picture items. You know, I don't need to know that they had to buy an extra truck or something like that.
Understood, Mr. Koblis. We will have that for you, and we are working on dashboards to be able to share that information at a high level.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yep.
So I have one other question.
Sure.
Whose throat do we choke when they are 2 years late on building this thing?
Hopefully not mine.
No, I don't assume it's going to be anybody at Loudoun Water. But we've got so many players now. I mean, who's going to be responsible? I mean, I know that the contractors, I mean, that's what I got that whole time on Trap Rock. But I mean, we've got to do something better than what we did on Trap Rock. And I assume that's why we went to this CMAR process. And I don't know if it's going to be Black and Veatch's issue or Arcadis's issue or what, but I don't know. Right now we're using Clark as the project manager. So I assume it's Clark's responsibility to make sure that the the subcontractors are meeting the deadline. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you are correct on that. So 90% of the work on the construction side will be performed by subcontractors. That is a requirement of Virginia public procurement law. And Clark will be responsible for managing them. So you are correct. They are responsible for the construction schedule.
And Jonathan, are you still around?
Yes, sir.
Oh, no. You've got that ironclad contract that we had on Trap Rock on this one too, right?
I'll be taking a careful look at the contract. Yes.
Yeah, because I loved what happened at Trap Rock. I mean, it wasn't great for the contractor, but it was good for Loudoun Water. So that's good. All right. Do I have a motion? Is there any other comments? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to dominate these comments, but after what I went through with what I personally went through on Trap Rock, I wanted to kind of nip some of that in the bud. But any other questions? Okay, well, how about a motion then?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jim Bonfils. I'll make the recommended motion.
Okay, and the second?
Second from Marty.
Sean.
Okay, and since there were no other comments, go ahead with a roll call, Jewel.
Yes, sir. Mr. Bonfils?
Yes.
Mr. Byers?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Sursakar? Mr. Allen? I'm sorry, Mr. Sultan?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
And Mr. Koblis?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
All right, great.
Thank you all very much.
Oh, you're welcome. So now we're at Broad Run with Sarah. You're on.
All right, good afternoon. It's good to be with you. I'm joined by Kendra Sveum, who is our Director of Water Reclamation. So we are here today to request authorization to award a professional services contract for the Broad Run Phase 3 expansion project. So we had a wastewater workshop with the board back earlier in the summer, and we talked about the challenges facing the facility. So we mentioned at that time that we would be bringing something forward to you, and here we are. Kendra's gonna give a little bit of the background, refresh on the project drivers and goals, and then we'll talk about the procurement process, the scope of this particular contract and the timelines, and then end with our recommendation. Kendra?
All right. So a lot of what I'm going to talk through is going to build upon what we went through in the wastewater workshop, but we wanted to start with a visual here, and what we've got represented in this aerial is what Broad Run looked like about a year ago. So it's already changed from this view with everything that we have going on in the 16.5, but to bring a little context here, in the first 15 years of the plant's history, we did minor construction. So everything in green is what was either modified or added in that long period of time. And we were really improving operations. So we rehabbed our odor control filters. We put in the reclaimed water pump station, modified septic receiving. It was really improving operations. Our first capacity expansion came in with the 16.5 project that we're doing right now. And so you see in pink, everything that project is touching and building. So in scope, we really stepped it up and we're doing a lot more. And with this project, we're really getting 50% more capacity through the plant. So we maximized our existing assets to get as much treatment capacity out of them as we could. So now when we're looking into the phase 3, when we go back to the master plan, everything is blue. In blue is what will be in consideration for the phase 3 project. And we're really looking at another level of design and construction that this facility hasn't seen. This is going to be wholly new secondary treatment, tertiary treatment. We're going to look at sludge processing, additional equalization. It is much larger in the scale of what we're looking at doing. And then what we have also in the master plan, we just wanted to point out, is there is an additional phase beyond this that really looks at further advanced treatment. And this is us just looking at how might we predict, what regulation might come that we're not even sure of, or what other advanced technologies. So we've got space reserved, and this is part of us just also making sure that we know Broad Run can fit on our property. So when we zoom back to take a look at where we are in the total piece of property, so you've got, DCH and the O&M building over here, Loudoun County Parkway, running along the bottom. And then most of the property is covered by that floodplain. So at the end of phase 3, we'll have a small portion left for additional, but we really will be utilizing the site at that point. And so the project goals tied very closely to the project drivers, and we went through a bunch of the background on these in the summer workshop. But the primary objective here is to increase treatment capacity. Growth in the area is really projecting that we're going to exceed the 16.5 that we're building now. So we need to look at that next step of capacity. But that is hitting a bunch of other triggers and looking at lower nutrient removal levels. But we're also facing just changing regulations with emerging contaminants of concern like PFAS and things that we're going to have to tackle all at the same time with this construction. And with our goals of getting this new portion of capacity online come the challenges of the complexity of everything that we're going to be evaluating and making decisions on while balancing these objectives, because some of them may fight against each other. And then just the level of uncertainty that's out there, both with capacity needs as well as where regulations may be going. So this graph is the same graph that we saw in the summer, and it's really looking at our total wastewater flow. So what you're seeing are monthly flow averages and how it changes from month to month, but we've seen a very continual increase in wastewater being generated in our entire service area. So our capacity lines, we're adding together Broad Run and PI capacity because we have to look at that all as one system now because we're exceeding capacity in the PI. So any additional growth in that portion of the service area now has to be accommodated at Broad Run. And then our bottom projection line as we look to the future is a longer 10-year average. So this is a conservative projection. And then our shorter term projection is showing we've had faster growth within the last 5 years. So right now we're estimating we'll be somewhere in between slow growth and fast growth. As we get out towards 2030, we would be exceeding the additional capacity we're building right now at Broad Run. And all of these projections come with this list of unknowns that we've thrown out there just so that you have it in your takeaway, but we have to balance all of these when trying to estimate where we're going to be about 10 years out. And now to get this new capacity online, we need planning time because we have to decide what process goes in each of those boxes and make sure that they're all compatible and going to meet our effluent limit goals. So we've got 2 years set aside for that level of planning, estimating after that a 3-year design and 5-year construction period. That means 10 years out, it's going to take us to get new capacity online in a very aggressive schedule. So that means we really need to start now to be ready in 2030. And one of the questions that came up in the CIP meeting that I just wanted to follow up on, and it's a very valid question about the potential for us to get any more capacity from DC Water. And Loudoun Water staff are always positioned for that. And it would be very beneficial if we were to able to achieve that. So we touch DC Water in major points between finances and emergency response and their capital planning and modeling. And any of those interactions, we're always looking for those opportunities if they were to become available. But there are just the challenges with that of the current interceptor is already over allocated, and then the agreements are very complicated with all the utilities. But even with those challenges, we're not taking it off of the list as a viable option that we should always be pursuing. So we do want to keep that at the forefront, because you just never know how planning from that jurisdiction might one day change and could open this window up to us. So we're keeping that on the list to keep a lookout for any opportunity that might come up there, or with other jurisdictions in the area, as Fairfax County continues with their advanced planning. That's one of the benefits of all the flexibility we have with our interconnected system, is being able to look for those opportunities that might be more cost effective to get more treatment capacity. So for phase 3, similar to what Savita showed, we wanted to lay out a proposed project structure so that we could bring these various contracts together and fit in where we are. So our current estimate is we'll have task A that we're bringing today, where we're going to do that initial planning with the goals of selecting our technologies and deciding what that expansion increment needs to be. We're theorizing right now that we'll follow that up with another small contract that just looks at packaging and timing, right? Once we've picked what needs to be built, some strategic laying out of what needs to get on fastest, how can we pull this together? So once we look how those options come together, we're estimating right now we'll have 2 different construction tracks. A shorter interim construction of things that need to get online faster to help us bridge this gap between 16.5 and where we go, with a longer term engineering and construction phase that gets the entire capacity out there. So this is just our inkling right now as to how we're seeing it, but this will flesh out more as we go through tasks A and B. But today we're only here with the scope for task A, and that's going to allow us to solidify a lot of these unknowns and be able to scope the rest of these tasks better a couple of years down the line. So what is actually in our scope really falls into a couple of big chunks. So one of the big tasks that we've got in A is selecting the increment for expansion, because to know how big we need to be predicting flows even beyond the chart that we already showed. And so that's going to take a lot of modeling and projections of climate change and industrial growth in the area, as well as population changes, density changes. So we're going to combine a lot of models that we have to really extend our flow projections to help select that increment. We're going to start from where we were in the master plan and start from those roadmaps, give them an update for technology changes that have occurred in the last 5 or 6 years, and really pick where we need to be based on the milestones laid out in those. And then from that, we need to select the processes and technologies that we're going to utilize. And so this is going to be really coming up with 3 major alternatives of how you can mix and match on liquids and solids to meet our regulatory and operational requirements. And so those are relatively standard and are typical for our planning process that we've been through. However, due to these really stringent nutrient limits that are coming that we spoke about in the workshop, we're really going to have to start innovating, and particularly on the operational controls that we utilize at the facility. And one of the reoccurring themes here at Loudoun Water is, the innovation is a result of circumstance. And so the fact that we're one of the fastest growing counties in the state is really pushing us ahead of other communities in the regulatory limits that we're reaching. And so in the scope that we have, we've also got the development of operational tools. And these tools are going to help us verify now that with our current technologies and where we're going, we can meet these advanced effluent performance limits that we're going to have. And so this is work that would typically be done really in the construction phase of a project. But we need to develop these tools at this point so that we can reassure ourselves that this is going to work. We can meet these limits, and we're making a sound decision by building a lot more capacity with these specific technologies. And this is very exciting. And so the image I've laid out here is actually our first machine learning map connecting everything in the facility that is affecting our phosphorus measurements at both coming out of the membranes and exiting the effluent of the plant. And this is really the next step into just saying chemical dosing affects our phosphorus. There's actually a lot more going on. And these machine learning algorithms will help us get more in predicting where we're going operationally instead of reacting to where we are. Because again, when our limits get lower and we're beyond state-of-the-art technology as defined by the state and really pushing the theoretical limit of what we can remove in nitrogen and phosphorus, our operational variability has to be in a very, very narrow band to achieve these limits. And so this was an important scope item for us to move forward and put in this planning contract so that, that we can verify for ourselves that we're making the appropriate decisions, but these tools can then also be used for the next 10 years, which will help us improve operational efficiency, as well as hopefully some cost savings as we narrow down our window of operations. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to talk about the procurement of the contract. And unless we can pause here. That was a lot. Any questions on the technical portion before we move into that?
I do have a question. Will task A include evaluating technology to remove PFAS from our biosolids?
Absolutely. So we've already started the data gathering portion of that, but it is definitely one of the big pending regulations of concern. So it's high on our list, and we've got that in consideration. And it'll be a major modification from the biosolids roadmap that we had in the master plan, because in 2014 to 2015, PFAS wasn't talked about then. So it will be a divergence from that plan, but we're also looking at other constituents and concerns like microplastics that may come up and how whatever technology we select might do that. So we're going to do a whole regulatory screening, but PFAS is absolutely on the list. And we'll be looking for what else might be pending out there that we want to try to catch. Because, you know, the point is good. If we're building now, we want to get as many of those as we can.
That's great. Thank you.
Mr. Allen?
Yeah, thank you. On the algorithm page, are those molecules? I can't quite see what those representations
Yeah.
are.
What these are, what each dot is a piece of data in the plant. So there's, and the words are really tiny. And once we get into this and get this working, I'd love to come back and present on it again. They're all pieces of data that we measure, and the machine learning algorithm said, well, which data that we have in the facility is affecting effluent phosphorus? And so there's over 30 things here that septage pH or temperature of the wastewater is also affecting in some way our effluent phosphorus measurement. And so our goal now is to narrow this down and say, okay, which 5 of these parameters can we then use to develop a model that will predict where effluent phosphorus might be? Because again, to date, we've been looking at, well, if effluent phosphorus is high, we increased alum. But there could be other things influencing that, other knobs we can turn, or even indicators as to which way that concentration might be going, because there's so many things going on in the facility. Sometimes the move doesn't make sense. And you're like, man, why is it going up? I just don't understand. And all of these dots could be influencing in some way what's going on with that effluent number.
Wow, crazy. Thank you.
Kendra, I'm over here. I'm waiting to get control.
Yeah, I haven't seen a request come through for me. Oh, there it went.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the project management, the contract side of things. So we started this procurement process back in February. We put out an RFP, request for proposals, and at the end of March, we received proposals from 2 firms. We had 7 members of a selection committee, so we had people from operations, maintenance, engineering, the general manager's office, all supported by our procurement department, who came together, reviewed proposals, and we ultimately shortlisted both firms and interviewed them at the end of May. So the committee made a selection, and since then we've been working with Hazen and Sawyer, who is the firm that we are recommending today, to refine a scope and fee and schedule for this work. So we're really excited to finally reach this point and look forward to starting this in the near future. I've got a CIP project snapshot here I want to share. I think the big takeaway is that this project is in the CIP. It is something that we are planning for. You know, Kendra talked in great detail about the project drivers, but the 2021 CIP, which is what you're seeing here, had $1.5 million for traditional planning. All of the fancy neural network graphic that Kendra showed is something that we really consider to be above and beyond, but quite necessary for this work, considering it's bringing us the confidence in the technology decisions. But you know, what we had in the 2021 CIP, the funds extended beyond the 2030 timeframe last time. So at this point, we've got some additional information, and really what we're thinking now is that the phase 3 construction cost is likely to be in the $250 to $300 million range. We've got more data now than we had last year, so we are adjusting the 2022 CIP based on some of the inputs. But I think the key thing here is that as we go through this process, we're going to be refining what the CIP budget is. You know, one of the major elements that is likely to impact the budget, or that will impact the budget, is the increment of expansion that we go with. If we do, you know, a 5, a 10, or a 15 MGD increment of expansion, you know, there's significant dollars associated with that. So we'll refine the CIP and make sure that, you know, we're keeping the board apprised as we go through the planning phase. This shows the fee breakdown for this particular scope of work. So you can see, you know, this is what we kind of put in the traditional planning bucket. It's about $1.57 million. The additional effluent performance verification you see below there is $310,000. That's really these advanced analytical tools that will be developed really as far as looking at planning, but will also give us they'll give us benefit right away, to be honest, with the operation of the existing facility. So the total fee for this work is $1.88 million. Similar to what Savita shared, we're going to, you know, we're at the starting point here, so this is not particularly, you know, fancy at this point, but we are going to continue to lay this out and provide a high-level holistic viewpoint of the budget and spending as we move through this project. Timeline, as Kendra mentioned, you know, to get to the endpoint, to have the capacity online in the 2030-2031 timeframe, we're really, it is really important to embark and start this planning process now. And then to follow with the design and construction process. So this really reflects the entire project. As Kendra mentioned, we have mentioned before that we like to take an adaptive planning approach, and that we always are trying to understand how do we feed in new information and try to gain efficiency and deliver in ways that are best for the organization. So there's a potential for something to come there. But I think it's important to also remember that there is an ongoing construction project at Broad Run. So that's under construction now. That's getting us to the 16.5 MGD. And that's looking to wrap up towards the end of 2024, early 2025. With that, I'm happy to take any questions, or if you have any more for Kendra, and there is a recommended motion before you.
Okay, without any questions, can I have a motion, please?
Jim Bonfil, so make the motion. Recommended motion.
A second is
Marty
Sean.
Sultan seconded.
Okay, with no questions, I see, Jewel, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Mr. Bonfils,
Mr. Bonfil votes yes.
Mr. Byers,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Ms. Sursakar,
Yes.
Mr. Sultan,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
and Mr. Koblis.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Brian, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the board. I'm here today to seek your approval for the adoption of a resolution of intent to increase rates, fees, and charges. Just a little background and schedule going forward. In February 2021, Loudoun Water contracted with Stantec Consulting to conduct a cost of service and rate study for user rates, reclaimed water rates, availability charges, plan review, inspection review, record drawing, CCTV, and connection charges. On September 30th, Stantec Consulting presented the results of those studies at a workshop. Today, we're asking you to adopt a resolution of intent and set a public hearing date. If approved, we'll also publish these in the October 21st and 28th edition of the Loudoun Times Mirror. In addition, we will mail letters to customers, post on social media, and meet with the industry to make sure they're aware of the coming changes. November 18th is the scheduled date for the rate hearing, and then at your December 9th board meeting, we'll ask you for final approval for rates that will go into effect January 1st of 2022, 2023, and 2024. So high level, the user rates, the Stantec is recommending a 3% increase for January 1st each of the next 3 years. And you can see what that impact is dollar value wise on a quarterly bill for a customer using 21,000 gallons of water. So around $7. And then this is what the actual rates will look like each year for the next 3 years. For the residential, we have 3 tiers, commercial 2 tiers on the water side, and then sewer, we have a uniform rate for usage. Fixed charges. These are increasing 3% for your residential customers, and then some of your commercial customers will experience a little bit more of an increase as we are matching the scaling to the purchase capacity in the system to match the availability charges. So this is water, and then the same on the sewer side.
Okay, Brian, I have a question. Yes. And I am unfortunately having a lot of issues, so with dialing in today, but I'm here. I have a quick question for you. So these percentages, what is the thought process behind that? So 3% would be for residential. And then did you say it was 5% for commercial?
It varies. As you can see, some of the scaling like here is only going from 1.3% to 1.5. Here, down here at the 4 and the 6-inch meters are a little more. So it's kind of all over the place, but 95% of your customers are in this 3% increase here. It'll just be the commercial customers that are going to experience a little bit more.
What do you mean by a little bit more? Can you provide us a percentage, even if it's just approximate percentage?
Sure. It's probably more. Some are probably around 10. Some are going to be a little bit less than that, but I can get you approximate percentages.
we will have
Sorry.
approximate percentages, Brian, but what I want to understand is I want to understand this percentage value and how it is being measured. Like, why is it 10% for some? We can be ready. This question may come up, you know, as the percentages are charged. So it starts from here, from the board of directors, where we need to know and provide us a reasoning as to why it's 3% for residential and 10% or varies, because it's data, it's a number, and people have a right to know.
Yes, and I can definitely get that to you. That's no problem. I think what we're trying to do here is, again, on the availability charge, when they pay, a commercial customer that gets a 6-inch meter pays for 68, times a 1 residential. And so we're matching that is what we're trying to do to make sure that the capacity is the same.
How are we matching that? I don't understand.
When you look at the go ahead,
Brian.
Carla. No, you can go ahead.
I'm going to try to help you out a little bit here. So what happens is everything is based on an equivalent residential connection. And so a residential, as you can see, is 1. Every meter size bigger than that is equated back to the residential meter. So if we need a 3/4 inch meter, that means the capacity of that meter is 1.5 times that of the residential. So they will therefore pay 1.5 times more for their availability charge and now for this fixed charge. What you'll see is that over time, the current column was a bit skewed from the actual scaling and the actual capacity of a meter in relationship to that residential. And so we are making that right. Not that it was wrong before, but we're making them consistent, which will actually help in that communication to the development community and to our customers to say, you have a 1-inch meter, you have 3 times the capacity in that meter, therefore you'll pay 3 times the residential fixed charge.
So previously we didn't have a 3 times, extended capacity. What was the capacity in the past, and what was the percentage we were charging in the past?
Yeah, so that would be your current column on this screen. So for a 1-inch meter, we were charging 3.07. And why that is we were looking at the actual usage within our own system rather than looking at the true capacity of a 5/8 inch meter compared to that of a 1-inch meter. So we're getting back to a very consistent relationship between meter size for both basic charges and for the availability charge. And it's important to note, this is just for these fixed charges.
Right.
The user rates themselves are going up 3% across the board.
I just have one more question. So in terms of the capacity, increasing the capacity 3 times, correct?
Right. If you have a 1-inch meter,
okay,
right.
Tell me, I just need to understand why we didn't increase the capacity in the past. Why are we increasing the capacity now? Or we didn't have the, the technology or the innovation or the leverage, we were not able to leverage technology or innovation or whatever it may be, these integral parts that are able to increase the capacity. Why were we not able to do that in the past, and why were we doing it right now?
Well, we have been using the relationship. Again, if you look at a residential meter as 1, we have been using the relationship of every other meter size bigger than a 5/8 in relation to this residential connection. What has happened over time, though, is that we were charging 3.07 times. Now we're saying we're going to charge 3 times because that's what we charge on the availability fee. We're trying to keep everything consistent where we can tell the story. So we have been doing this all along. It's really now we're changing the demand ratios to be what they should be in order to be equivalent to the availability charge. And I know that's complicated, and we can certainly calculate those percentages, but it is what we have been doing. It's just now we are more clearly aligning them with what we are doing on the developer side of the house as well.
Okay, and yes, you said it right. I mean, it's important for me. I can't speak for the other board members, but it's important for me to understand the complexity behind that so that I can make a sound judgment on the board.
Absolutely.
So that's the reason. I don't mean to be grilling anybody here, but I'm doing my due diligence by asking these questions. So if these questions are ever asked before, at least I have a answer to provide.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Looks like Mr. Allen.
Yeah, I just want to make Angeline feel like she asked the right questions. We went through a lot of this during the rate workshop last week, and I had very similar questions about why we were charging 43 times the current rate of a 6-inch meter versus a 1-inch or a 5/8 residential, as opposed to 68 times. So spot on. So don't worry about that. Those are good questions.
Absolutely.
So this is a snapshot of the quarterly residential bill comparison. You can see where Loudoun Water customers are today, and then what their new quarterly bill will be starting next year if you approve the new rates, and then where we fall in comparison to some of our neighboring utilities. Stantec also reviewed reclaimed water rates. And they are recommending a 3% increase for those as well for 2022, 2023, and 2024. We have one uniform rate for that, and you can see that a 3% increase will raise those about 5 cents per year for the next 3 years. Availability charges, water and wastewater, Stantec is recommending a 3% increase again for the next 3 years, each year starting January 1st. These are the proposed rates for the next 3 years for the water availability charge. And for the wastewater charges. And then here is a comparison for where our fees are currently for availability, where they're proposed to go next year, and then where we compare to the neighboring utilities. And then finally, they also reviewed what we call developer fees, ancillary fees, plan review, inspection, connection charges, record drawing, and CCTV. And they're also recommending 3% increases for those starting next year and continuing in 2023 and 2024.
Terry, did you have a question? I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I did, and then I let it go. But since you asked me, do we know what the construction cost index is? I know we talked about it briefly at the rates study meeting, and I know it's much higher than the 3% that we're raising rates, but do we know what it is right now?
Not off the top of my head. I don't recall what it is.
Tran, are you on? If you know that, we might know that answer, Mr. Allen.
If you give me a minute, I can look it up right now, but I don't know it off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Okay.
I'm just curious because I know, obviously the CPI is running at 5.5%, so I'm sure, the constructions are probably higher, I would at least guess. So, I'm concerned about that, but thanks.
One thing we do want to remind you about is that we did commit to, again, kind of digging into this availability charge and methodology and coming back to you sometime next year with something more than probably this inflationary type increase.
I'm happy to answer any other questions. If not, here's the recommended motion is in front of you.
This is Terry. I'll move that the board adopt the attached resolution of intent to revise the user rates.
I'll second it.
It doesn't look like there's any other questions. Roll call, please. Jewel?
Yes, sir. Mr. Bonfils,
I vote yes.
Mr. Byers,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Ms. Sursakar,
Yes.
Mr. Sultan,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
and Mr. Kobliss.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you all very much.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, Brian, do you have anything to say on your, I'm sorry, there is some new business. I forgot, I was going through my agenda and there is a new business and Sean, I believe you're going to recommend, oh, here it comes right now, I guess. Or do you have a motion coming, or I don't know if it's written someplace, or are you just going to read it?
Yeah, I guess I'll just, 1 second, I'll pull it up. I was just going to read it.
Oh, here it is.
Actually, this is just for the history of this. This was something, I think, Marty, I think you suggested this a while ago, and we were hoping to be to have returned in-person meetings by now. And Carla and I talked about this, and this came about when I was still chairman, so that's how long ago it was. It has been sitting around, but we thought we would wait until the in-person meeting, but we, with the delays and so forth, we thought we'd go ahead and do that, take care of that at this meeting. So this is a resolution expressing thanks and gratitude for the Loudoun Water employees during COVID-19 pandemic. Bear with me, I'd like to read it so it gets into the record. It's important, and employees all have said it's just been an outstanding job during this time. Whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has represented the most significant public health challenge in our community in over a century, whereas Loudoun Water employees have been committed to providing safe and reliable water and wastewater services to the customers we serve, whereas Loudoun Water employees have gone above and beyond their normal responsibilities to help our customers during the pandemic, staying true to our mission. Whereas Loudoun Water employees have shown dedication and adherence to strict safety protocols to protect the health of each other and our customers, whereas Loudoun Water employees have exhibited resilience and commitment throughout the COVID-19 pandemic despite stress, challenges, and uncertainty. Whereas our essential employees who maintained our critical operations performed their work at times with the risk of exposing themselves and their family to COVID-19. Whereas Loudoun Water response to COVID-19 pandemic required changes to operations, remote work for the majority of staff, virtual meetings and events, closing our public buildings. Whereas Loudoun Water employees have worked hard to keep community members and staff connected and engaged through the rapid adoption of remote work technologies, as well as through the expansion of telework. Whereas the efforts of all our employees are deserving of acknowledgement and appreciation. Be it therefore resolved, the Loudoun Water Board of Directors expresses its deep gratitude, service, professionalism, and dedication of Loudoun Water staff during the pandemic. Unwavering service and spirit that Loudoun Water staff exhibit in their work are emblematic of what makes Loudoun Water a truly special organization. Be it further resolved that the Loudoun Water Board of Directors recognize and applaud the contributions of all of our staff, commend the essential frontline employees who have reported on site since day one of this pandemic, recognize the value and dedication of our employees to the safety, security, and well-being in our community, both through their outstanding performance during this pandemic, through their general ongoing work to keep our communities vibrant and thriving. Express gratitude, appreciation, and heartfelt gratitude to our employees through unprecedented challenges facing our communities as a result of COVID-19. I'll make a motion to adopt that resolution.
I'd like to make the motion, and I want to thank Marty for coming up with this. I know we all feel this way, but it's just great that we can put it in writing. Sean, thanks for putting this together, writing this. I'm not sure if you got any assistance from anybody else, but
I can't take credit. This is Sue Crosby, and I did some edits, and that's about it.
Well, I think it's great, and I'd like to make the motion.
I'll second.
This is Angeline.
I'd like
I
to
will
second
second
it.
that. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I had Mr. Kelly as making the first motion. Mr. Kobliss, did you wish to second?
Oh, okay, I'll second.
Thank you, sir. And ready for the vote?
Sure.
Mr. Bonfils,
Yes.
Mr. Byers,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Ms. Sersakar,
Yes.
Mr. Sultan,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
A big yes.
and Mr. Koblis.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, moving on. Brian, is there any additional comments you have for your monthly report?
No, but I'm happy to take any questions.
All right. With that, Jessica, your water resources management monthly report. If I remember, during our water meeting, we were going to have, and I'm sure it's not ready yet, but on the next report, we'll have reporting on the community systems or the groundwater, that other than what the United States Geological Survey does.
Yes, that was discussed at the Water Resources board meeting. I don't know if we put an exact date on it, if it was for the next board meeting, but we're working on it.
Okay, that's great. Is there any questions or comments on Jessica's report? All right. Any comments on the water and sewer agreements by Hawaii?
Just to answer your question, Mr. Allen, what I'm seeing right now in terms of construction cost index is about 6% year on year.
Is that locally or nationally?
Nationally.
Yeah, I believe it's probably a lot higher in this area, but it's funny. Maybe I'll ask somebody at HIT or something like that what it is around here. But thanks, Wei. All right, so we're going to go into a closed meeting, and do I need to? It's been a while. Do I need to read something before we go into the closed meeting, Jonathan, or once we get into it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We'll take a vote of the board to go into the closed meeting. I believe there's a motion in your board docs.
I've got it. I've got it right here.
And so we'll have to take a vote on that. And then once that, if that motion passes, then the board members will close out of the current Teams meeting, go to the other Teams meeting that Jules sent you. That should be on your calendar, and so we'll see you there. And then after the closed meeting discussion, we'll come back to the public session on this this meeting.
Okay, I'll go ahead and read the motion. Pursuant to section 2.23711 of the Code of Virginia, I move that the board of this authority enter into a closed meeting. The authority for this closed meeting is found in section 2.23711, subsection 3. The items to be discussed are potential disposition of publicly held real property. Can I have a second?
This is Angeline. I'll second that.
Okay, and then roll call, and then go ahead, Jewel.
Yes, sir. Mr. Bonfils,
Yes.
Mr. Byers,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Ms. Sersakar,
Yes.
Mr. Sultan,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
and Mr. Koblis.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. See you in the closed meeting.
Yeah, there's another invite to go onto, and I'll see you there.
Please leave this meeting and then open the other meeting. Thank you.